All right, so today we're diving into a story that's got everyone talking. Um, the dock worker strike.
Yeah, it's causing quite a stir.
It is. It's
No.
got ports from Boston all the way to Houston at a standstill.
Mhm.
And we're going to try to understand.
We're going way back to
Yeah. How
1947
about back in time?
to the Taft-Hartley Act to really get a grip on.
Yeah, this is not just some history lesson.
No.
This could actually be the thing that gets those ships moving again.
I think it very well could be.
But it's stirring up a lot of controversy, a lot of political tension around it as well.
Without a doubt.
We're basing our deep dive on a really fascinating analysis from the Associated Press. It was published just a couple days ago on October 2nd.
Very timely.
It is. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of this law, I kind of want to set the stage. What's actually happening right now?
So picture this. 45,000 dock workers across 36 ports. And we're talking the East Coast, the Gulf Coast, everything's at a standstill.
That's a huge chunk of the U.S. economy.
It's massive. And you know what happens? Every single day that goes by just adds another layer to the disruption.
And we're already seeing the effect.
Oh, absolutely. Manufacturers are freaking out a little bit. They're worried about running out of parts. Stores are starting to get nervous about empty shelves with the holidays coming up.
Oh, that's right.
And and honestly, as soon as people even get a whiff of a shortage,
Yeah.
it's like the toilet paper hoarding of 2020 all over again.
Yeah.
It just throws everybody into this tailspin. Uncertainty at every level.
Right, from the factory floor to, the average person who just wants to buy something.
Exactly. And so you've got this pressure cooker of a situation, and then someone tosses in, hey, remember the Taft-Hartley Act?
Okay, so let's talk about that.
Let's do it?
Because this isn't the first time, right, that this has been used in a situation like this.
No, not at all. In fact, you could look all the way back to 1952, the steel strike. And this was a huge deal, very similar to what we're seeing today. The steel industry was everything back then. I mean, we're talking post-war economic boom, national defense. It was a big deal.
So it's considered a national crisis back then as well.
They thought the world was ending.
Wow.
And Truman, President Truman at the time, he felt like he had to do something. And he had this tool in his back pocket, the Taft-Hartley Act, and it gave him the power to step in.
So this wasn't the first time a president had to really weigh those implications.
Not even close. And this time around, you've got these business groups, right? And they are practically begging Biden, invoke Taft-Hartley. They're saying that economic pain is just too much to bear.
Right.
And they paint this picture, right? Factories are just going to grind to a halt.
Yeah.
Businesses are going to shut down. The economy is going to fall apart.
It's a domino effect.
Exact.
But we can't just ignore the other side of the coin here,
No, absolutely not.
which is the unions, right?
Of course, yeah.
What are their thoughts on all of this?
Well, to put it mildly, for them, Taft-Hartley is not exactly a walk in the park.
Right.
They see it as the ultimate anti-worker move. Like, if you're going to come after us and our power to bargain, this is how you do it.
Which is interesting because it was actually created by a Democrat, wasn't it? President Truman.
You're totally right. Ironically, though, he vetoed it. But, and this is the crazy part, Congress was like, nope, we got this. And they overrode his veto.
Wow.
And so it became law.
So he vetoed it because he thought it was tipping the scales too
Yeah,
far
exactly.
in the other direction.
He was like, this is too much. This is undermining workers' rights. We're giving all this power to the employers.
And those criticisms obviously are still around today.
Oh, yeah. They haven't gone away.
So what you're saying is this has always been a controversial piece of legislation.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, even mentioning Taft-Hartley, it's like you just threw a match on a pile of kindling.
Right.
People have very strong opinions on both sides of the aisle about it.
So we know it was controversial, but what is it about this Taft-Hartley Act that makes it so potent, so feared by some and championed by others?
Well, I think at the heart of it is that it gives the president this immense power to step into these labor disputes
Right.
when they're seen as a threat to the nation.
Okay.
And that's where it gets interesting, right? Because the law itself uses this language of national health and safety.
Which is kind of broad, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, talk about broad. So that obviously leaves a lot of room for interpretation.
Right. Like, where do you draw the line?
Exactly.
A stub toe versus, no food in the grocery store.
That is the question.
Yeah.
And that's why you see it being used in very different ways throughout history. And the law itself, it's pretty vague on purpose because it gives that discretion to the president
Right.
to decide, is this a big enough deal for me to step in?
Right.
And in the case of this dock worker strike, the folks who are saying, Biden, you gotta invoke Taft-Hartley.
They're saying this is a big enough deal This is impacting the entire nation.
So they're saying it's a threat to national health and safety, this strike.
Yes, because of the economic fallout, right?
Right.
They're saying you're going to have shortages of essential goods, prices are going to go through the roof,
Yeah.
businesses are going to start closing left and right. It's going to be a mess.
It's that domino effect again.
Exactly. And their point is, it's not just about the workers and the companies anymore.
Right.
It's impacting everyone.
Yeah.
So it's a national issue.
So what are the unions saying to that?
Well, they have a very different take, as you can imagine. They say this is just a bunch of fear-mongering,
Okay.
that the business groups are just trying to scare everybody into getting the president on their side.
Got it.
And their argument is that if you use Taft-Hartley in this case, it sets a really dangerous precedent.
Right.
Because, they say, then the government can just step into any labor dispute that causes even the slightest economic hiccup.
So they're thinking about the bigger picture.
Absolutely. It's about the principle, right?
Right.
It's about workers' rights, the right to strike.
Right.
And they say this is a fundamental tool that they have to negotiate fair wages, better conditions, to have a voice.
It's about more than just this one strike.
Exactly.
It's about the future of, like, how this plays out.
It's a power struggle at its core.
So it's ideology as much as anything else.
100%. And then you throw in the political dimension.
Oh, right. Because the timing of this is crucial.
It couldn't be worse. I mean, we're weeks away from a midterm election.
Right. So Biden is in a really tough spot here. He wants to keep everyone happy, but that's easier said than done, right?
Yeah.
You've got these powerful business groups on one side,
Right.
and then on the other side, you have labor unions, which are a huge part of the Democratic base.
Right, a key constituency.
Exactly. And it's not just Biden, right? Think about Vice President Harris.
Yeah, she's got a tough re-election battle as well.
And she really relies on union support. So if they alienate that base, it could be really bad news for her.
So it's a pressure cooker on every side.
No doubt about it.
But even if Biden does decide to invoke Taft-Hartley,
Yeah.
what does that actually look like? What are the next steps?
So if he decides to do it, the first thing is he's got to go to the courts, get a court injunction that says stop the strike, and then that triggers this 80-day period.
Cooling off period.
Right. And it's important to remember, this isn't about forcing a specific outcome.
Right.
It's about forcing them back to the table to hash it out,
Right.
to have those conversations.
Yeah.
So it's meant to create this space for dialogue, but, under a court order.
So it's like a timeout, but with a judge watching.
Exactly.
It's a forced timeout, but somebody's keeping score.
Yeah.
Right? With the clock ticking.
Right, exactly. And this is where it really gets interesting.
Okay.
Because that cooling off period, it doesn't actually mean anybody's going to come to an agreement.
Right.
It just means they have to sit down and talk about it.
Right.
And, this has happened before, Taft-Hartley.
Yeah.
It's been used 37 times
Wow.
since it was first put into law, and the results are mixed. Sometimes you get everybody in the room, they hash it out, and they figure out a compromise, and it works.
Right.
Other times, the workers are like, see you in court, and they keep striking anyway. So then you've just got this whole other problem.
Right. It just makes it worse.
Exactly, yeah. And even when you do get the negotiations going again, it doesn't mean they're going to reach an agreement.
Right. It's not the guarantee.
Not at all.
So what you're saying is this isn't like a magic solution.
No, there's no quick fix here.
Okay.
And I think the other thing that's important to remember is that Taft-Hartley, it doesn't say what the agreement has to be.
Right.
It doesn't force anyone to make certain concessions.
Got it.
It's more like we're setting the table for you. We're creating this structure, but it's still up to the parties to actually come to some kind of resolution.
So it's like we're setting the table, but will they actually eat the food or just like throw it at each other?
That's a great way to put it. And that's really what makes this so uncertain, right? You can force them to talk, but you can't force them to agree.
Okay, so knowing all of this, what does it tell us about what might happen with this dock worker strike?
Well, if I had a crystal ball, right? But the truth is, Taft-Hartley, it's a gamble. It's a huge gamble. It could be the thing that gets everybody back on track.
Okay.
Or it could blow up in everyone's faces and make the whole situation worse.
Right. It has the potential to go either way.
Exactly.
And we haven't even talked about what this means for other industries, for the labor movement as a whole.
Right. This is bigger than just these dock workers.
This is about the entire relationship between, like, workers and employers.
Right. How we think about work in this country.
Exactly.
It's a big deal.
It's a huge deal.
So if this all plays out a certain way, could we see a resurgence in unionization
Possible.
in other industries?
It's possible. Or you could have the opposite, right? Where workers say, what's the point? The government's just going to side with big business anyway.
So it really is a pivotal moment.
It really is.
Not just for these workers, but for the future of work in America.
Exactly.
And to think that all of this comes down to this law from 1947, it just goes to show you how much history matters.
It's all connected.
It is. Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive into a really complex issue.
It is.
And we'll obviously keep following this story as it unfolds.
Yes. But for now, that's it for our deep dive. Thanks for listening.